He screamed about freedom. He called the uniform a joke. And then he threw hot coffee in a guard's face, thinking nothing would happen. He was wrong. So wrong. It started with shouting. Not the usual tourist noise. No stand closer for the photo, no kids laughing, no camera shutters. This was sharper, angrier, laced with something darker than performance. "This is what you worship?" the man yelled, standing just outside the barricade that separated the Royal Guard from the public. He was in his late 30s, wiry, unshaven, with wild eyes and a navy hoodie damp from sweat. His voice cut through the late morning air like broken glass. "A mannequin with a rifle? A costume for your kings and crowns?" At first, people thought he was just another loudmouth. London had plenty. He looked like a burned-out activist or maybe an internet provocateur, phone in one hand, paper cup of coffee in the other. He waved the cup like a prop, gesturing to the crowd as if he was giving a street lecture. A few tourists laughed nervously. Others kept filming. The Royal Guard nearest to him, tall, motionless, dressed in red with a black bearskin hat shading his face, stood like a statue, rifle at his side, chin level, breathing even, eyes locked forward. He didn't flinch when the man shouted, didn't blink when he mocked the uniform, didn't move when he stepped closer and said, "You're not a soldier, you're a puppet." The crowd tensed. Some laughed again uneasily. Others started backing up. But the man, he wanted attention. He wanted a reaction. And the Royal Guard's stillness. It only made him louder. "Tell me, soldier boy, when was the last time you actually fought for anything?" No answer, just silence, stoic, enduring, heavy. But the man wasn't finished. He raised the coffee cup, held it high like it was symbolic, and smirked. "Let's see how a lifeless statue reacts to something a little more real." He took a step closer, and the cup, still full, still hot, trembled slightly in his hand. The crowd didn't know it yet, but they were 3 seconds away from witnessing exactly what happens when tradition is pushed too far. The man's hand hovered in the air, the paper coffee cup swaying just slightly, catching the light. The lid had popped halfway loose. A wisp of steam curled upward. He wasn't shouting now. He was smirking. "Let's heat up the old British tradition," he said under his breath, mostly for his own live stream. The phone in his other hand was already rolling, angled perfectly to capture his face, the crowd, and the immovable soldier beside him. The guard hadn't moved, not one muscle. But the tension in the air was no longer theatrical, it was dangerous. The crowd shifted again. One woman gasped, "He's not actually gonna—" Too late. The man threw the coffee. It wasn't a wild splash. It was deliberate, controlled. The way a man might dump water on a fire he's trying to extinguish. Only this wasn't water, and there was no fire. The liquid hit the guard's chest with a heavy, wet slap. It splattered across his pristine red tunic, rolled down the polished buttons, soaked into the fabric. The rest of the splash sprayed along the guard's gloved hand and rifle grip, and some of it hit his face. A single drop clung to the line of his jaw, steaming faintly in the chill air. And still, he didn't move. The crowd froze. The camera didn't shake, but the hand behind it did. A father pulled his child back. A woman muttered, "He's done. That guy's done." The protester stepped back, clearly exhilarated, like a magician who had just pulled off his finale. "Still nothing? Seriously? That didn't do it?" he shouted. "Come on, say something, break your royal silence." He held his arms out like he'd just defeated a system, like he'd proven the myth wrong. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that the guard's stillness wasn't defeat. It was a countdown, and it had just reached 0. The sound of coffee hitting the uniform still echoed faintly in the background, liquid dripping from brass buttons onto stone. The guard stood there, steam rising from his glove, eyes fixed forward, body locked, for 1 second, then 2, then step. One precise, deliberate movement forward. The guard's boot struck the ground with the force of centuries. Clack. The crowd gasped. The protester's smug grin faltered. Second step. The guard moved again. Fluid, measured, like a predator no longer pretending to sleep. The man raised his hands reflexively. Whoa, whoa, relax, relax. But the guard didn't rush. He didn't grab. He spoke. And when he did, his voice hit harder than the coffee. Step back. Drop what's in your hands. And surrender. The words weren't shouted. They were issued, like a command to an invading force. The crowd froze. Phones lifted but didn't shake. One child whispered, "He talks?" The protester blinked, unsure whether to laugh or run. "You serious right now? Over a little coffee?" He tried to smirk again, but something in the guard's stillness, now alive and charged, told him this wasn't performance. This was purpose. The guard's voice came again. Colder. Slower. "You just assaulted the crown. You're now under military detainment. Stay where you are." The words dropped like bricks. Then, like clockwork, movement from the flanks. 2 additional figures in red stepped from the gates. Security in tactical black converged from the perimeter. The crowd parted. The protester raised both hands. The phone fell, his voice cracked. Okay, I was just... Look, it was a joke. But the guard didn't blink, didn't hesitate. Because now silence wasn't enough. Now tradition had answered. The moment the protester's phone hit the ground, everything shifted from performance to procedure. 2 palace security officers closed in, one from the left, one from behind. They didn't shout, they didn't rush. They moved like a team that had trained for exactly this. The royal guard didn't move again. He didn't need to. He had already set the tone, already flipped the script with 10 words and 2 steps. Now, with the crowd holding its breath, order was executing itself. The protester stood frozen, arms half raised, his expression caught between defiance and regret. "I didn't mean it like that. It was just coffee," he shouted. "It wasn't hot. It wasn't even—" Click. The sound of handcuffs answered for him. The officers pushed him gently but firmly to his knees, securing his wrists behind his back. His hat fell off. Someone kicked the paper cup aside. He started struggling, shouting louder now. "This is a public place. I have rights. I didn't touch him." But no one was listening. Not the officers. Not the tourists. Not the guard. The royal guard stood back in his original position. His gloves still glistened faintly with droplets. The steam had stopped, but his stillness had returned, this time with weight. Then the protester tried one last plea. "You're just a guy in a costume. You don't get to arrest people." And, for the first time since the takedown, the guard turned his head. Not much, just enough. His voice, low and level, cut through the protester's rant like a scalpel. "I served the crown. You served yourself. And now you'll serve time." The crowd erupted in quiet, not applause, just stunned reverence, phones lowered, eyes wide, because what they had just witnessed wasn't a meltdown. It wasn't chaos. It was discipline, sharpened to a point. And that point had just landed in handcuffs. By the next morning, the video was everywhere. It didn't need a title, just the thumbnail, a royal guard, soaked in coffee, a protester on his knees, and 3 words from the transcript. "Step back, surrender. The internet devoured it. Reaction channels broke it down frame by frame. TikToks remixed the takedown with dramatic music. Comment sections lit up with praise, disbelief, and the now viral phrase, "He didn't move until it mattered." Some headlines read like action films. Royal Guard breaks code of silence. When the crown strikes back. Tradition has a breaking point. Others were quieter. Stillness is not weakness. A lesson in composure. And the protester, he posted a shaky apology video from the backseat of a police van. Said he didn't mean to escalate. Said it was just performance art. Said, "I didn't think he'd actually react." But it was too late. The moment had already become a symbol. Not of anger, not of retaliation, but of dignity under fire. The guard gave no statement, no interview, no acknowledgement. The next day, he was there again. Same boots, same rifle, same stillness. But now, tourists didn't just take selfies. They stood with quiet respect. They whispered to their kids. They pointed not just at a uniform, but at a man who didn't react for himself. He responded for something bigger. And the world remembered. Some uniforms are worn. Others are carried, like a standard, like a shield, like a legacy.